All right, hello and welcome. This should be the familiar book summary, kind of walk through whatever of the plot. As always, there's going to be a book report attached to it that kind of digs deeper into some of the themes and blah, 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 blah. Right. And this was the book for August. We are now about to head into October, meaning that I've already finished the September book club book, which was The Adventures of Amina al-Sarafi, which was incredible, and I had the great pleasure of reading it with two friends, and that was just and so I will be working on the video and report for that soon. But the familiar first. So the book starts out in the perspective of Valentina. She is the wife of a failing olive farmer named Don Marius. We'll talk about him later. But she comes down to the kitchen area and she sees a burnt piece of bread, and that sets her off because she nitpicks a lot on the servants because her husband is failing and he don't be really giving her the time of day or caring about her, and she feels trapped, and so she just kind of like takes it out on the people that are lower than her, which are the servants, and they have few of those because again, they're poor. And so she's going ready to go take it out on the cook, and she finds the cook and she's like, "You burnt the bread, blah 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 blah," and the cook is like, "Oh, blah blah blah, what are you talking about?" And she brings the bread to her, and the bread is clean, and by clean I mean it's fixed. I don't know why I say clean, but she's like, whoa. And the way she interprets this in her brain, she's like, these maids are trying to fuck with me, so I'm gonna catch them. And then in the next chapter, the cook that Valentina was arguing with, her name is Agueda. And the celery maid that's like under the cook, and it's just like a housemaid, her name is Luisa. And so at nighttime, Luisa is helping Valentina get ready for bed. And Valentina challenges her, and she's like, "I know you did something to that bread. Tell me what you did." She looks her straight in her eyes and she's like, "I don't know what you're talking about." And Valentina is like shook because she could see something in Luisa's eyes. She's like, this girl does not look at me like she's a servant. After this, we flash into Luisa's perspective. Luisa goes down the street to visit her aunt Juanit. Juanit's name is, let me bring it up real quick, Catalina de Castro de Oro. So both Luisa and her aunt Juanit, whose real other name, I just said the whole thing of Catalina, all the other names, they are both of Jewish descent, which during this time, big no-no. So what a lot of Jewish people have done is kind of scrubbed their lineage and like come up with new identities. This is the case with Luisa's aunt. Luisa's aunt is, her real name is Juanit, and so that's what I'll call her, but like her official for the record name is Catalina, all those other names. And she is the mistress, important, not a wife. She's the mistress of one of the most important men in town named Victor de Paradis. And the reason why he is so important is because for generations, his family has had the servitude of a familiar, this magical being who provides boundless magical luck to their bloodline. So they've just been prospering for a mad long. Just keep all that in mind. So she goes to Juanit and she's telling her like, "Yo, I think someone might have found me out. I did one of my little miracles," because Juanit knows about Luisa's powers, and Luisa has these little spells that she learned as a child. There's not like a lot that she knows about that because it's something that they've had to keep secret, and she only knows the little that she was taught in her childhood, and it's always been a big part of her. So she's still kind of done it here and there, which is how she got caught in this instance, but she doesn't really know how to use it. But she's like, "Juanit, please, like, let me stay with you. Convince Victor for me to stay." And Juanit is like, "No, I can't do that for you, girl. Just go back and behave." When she goes back, Valentina sets a trap for her by making a rip in one of her dresses. And Valentina does not have a lot of nice dresses because, again, they're poor. Of the rich society, they are trying to act rich, so that in itself costs money. So they're pretty poor. And so she doesn't have really a lot of gowns, and so she rips one of them in order for Louisa to see it and see if she would fix it like she did the bread. And lo and behold, she did it. And then Valentina was like, ha, I caught you. Unless you want me to turn you over to the Inquisition, you're going to have to perform for some dinner guests of mine so we can start getting some status in high society again. Because while people with these like little powers and stuff can be seen as devil workers, they're also kind of used as like these little pets in order to provide power and entertainment to powerful people in the society. For the entire dinner, when Valentina drags Louisa out, Louisa's like, I'm not going to do this. I can't reveal myself, because once I reveal myself to these dinner guests, it's truly over. Oh, I can kind of deny it right now, but it's truly over if I do this. But while she's saying she won't do it, Valentina's husband, Don Marius, starts ridiculing Valentina, being like, stop with these party tricks, just go sit down, shut up. And this gets Louisa incensed. Not because necessarily she cares about Valentina, because they still got smoke with each other. But in that belittling of Valentina, she sees a bit of how much she lowers herself. And she could not stand that moment. And so she grabs a piece of glass and she shatters it on the ground, says one of her spells, and puts it back together. And the entire dining room is aghast. After this, like, Don Marius and Valentina's, social cachet starts to shoot through the roof. People are interested in this little miracle worker that they got in their home, and so they're starting to show up to these dinners that they previously wouldn't have cared about. And so it's kind of a way for Don Marius and Valentina to get back into high society. And so she is putting Louisa to work, doing mad of these dinners and not allowing Louisa to leave the house. The whole time Louisa is trying to see an opportunity to sneak out, because she's like, bro, as my renown continues to grow, at some point someone is going to catch word of me and I'm going to be in trouble. And after 10 days, she manages to escape from house, because she tells Valentina, like, yo, I haven't been to church in a while, and if I don't go for a very long time, that will also reflect negatively on you. And so Valentina's like, okay, you can go for an hour. And she's like, I'm gonna go however long I gotta go, and run straight to her Aunt Walid again. But as nervous as Louisa's growing renown is starting to make her, she's also seeing a potential to raise her station from being this low scullery maid, and she's actually like a bit intoxicated by where she might go. And so when she goes to see her aunt, she's telling her aunt, like, yo, this might be my ticket up. And her aunt is like, you better stop performing those miracles. And for performing her miracles, part of the reason why Louisa is thinking about where she could go is Valentina gave her one of her pearls, because she was like, if you keep doing a good job, there's more of this in it for you. And so Louisa takes the pearl to her Aunt Walid. She's like, sell this for me. And her aunt is like, you need to stop performing these miracles. And Louisa's like, hey, listen, I try to come to you for you to house me. You ain't helping me. I can't just be a poor maid my whole life. Like, I gotta try for something. And so then she leads back to her place, right? It's at this point that Louisa makes a conscious decision that she will be pursuing this path, no matter how reckless or ruinous it might be. And then at the next dinner party, after she performs her usual trick, there's this dude with a red beard that stands up and he's like, bro, that trick is nothing. Like, I don't care about that. And Louisa has a big ego, and she's like, oh, really? Okay, I got a trick for you. And she tells everyone at the dinner party to clap their hands. And when they do, she says another spell, and all the candles in the dining room flare up, and And everyone, like, all the nobles are, like, scared for a second, and they go back down. And then after a moment, like, all the nobles are like, woohoo, like, what a nice trick. But the red-bearded man looks deadly serious. And Louisa's like, oh, fuck, I might have messed up. At her first available opportunity, Louisa is like, I gotta get out of here no matter what. Like, my cover's blown, I just know it. So in the early morning, she sneaks out of her place and she runs to her aunt in order for her aunt to, like, help her ferry her away out of, you know, wherever the city. And she gets one knock on the door before the door just swings open, and her aunt is standing there, and she's like, you fucking done it now. Get in here. She pulls her in. Inside, Louisa is with her aunt, and she can hear, like, men voices talking in the courtyard. By the way, this is the house of Victor de Paradis, the lover of Aunt Wally. So, like, she's his mistress. I don't know. Her mister? I don't know. Anyway, this is their house, and she hears some voices out there, and she's like, bro, I know they brought the Inquisition to kill me, but she's like, why is my aunt, like, just kind of, like, talking here? Like, what's going on? Turns out, red-bearded dude did go report Louisa, and his name is Antonio Perez, and he is the disgraced right-hand man of the king. So he is going around trying to find people with powers in order to sponsor them and try to get them to in front of the king in order for the king to then be, like, use that magical being and get Antonio back in his good graces by giving him, like, ooh, a prophet that can help you win wars or that type of thing, right? The method by which this magical being is going to be selected is in a tournament competition that's coming up in, like, 3 weeks. And when Louisa comes to this house, she finds out that Victor had somehow intercepted this message, and now he was going to be sponsoring Louisa in order to get him more acclaim. And with Victor is Santagel, his familiar, the magical entity that's been giving his bloodline power for years. And this is the moment that Santagel and Louisa first meet, and, you know, he's like this little hobbled creature that she can barely see because he's been having his luck juices siphoned out for eons. And so that is this moment. Victor comes up and he tells Louisa, do some magic right in front of me. And so she chants a spell to make a vine, like a little grapevine grow, but she's looking at Santagel while she does it, and there's, like, some kind of magical moment that is shared between them, and, like, the entire courtyard just explodes in verdant growth. And it's like, ooh, like, something's happening here, right? With all this decided, they send this back to the Marius household, Don Marius and Valentina, because, you know, Louisa was running away, but they're like, now we got to do things through the proper channels. So the very next day, Victor shows up to the Don Marius home, and he tells them, I'm going to sponsor Louisa for this competition for the king. And so with this decided, they actually, like, elevate Louisa a little bit. Before, she was sleeping in the pantry, but they're like, hey, congratulations, we cleaned out a linen closet, so now you have a linen closet of your very own. Louisa's actually super excited about this linen closet because she's never really had anything. So while she's, like, loving her little New York apartment and just, you know, vibing in it, the shadows in the corners suddenly pop out, and out walks Santagel. And then he tells her, like, calm down. Like, the reason why you're even getting this gig is because the last dude that was the patron that was in this competition got assassinated. And that's the position that you're in now. So this is cutthroat, and you got to be careful. And she's like, bet. He also warns her not, like, of certain areas in magic not to venture into, and one of these is resurrection, which I wrote in my notes when I was reading this part of the book. And it's so cool because in the notes I was like, I think this is kind of foretelling her resurrecting him, which ends up happening. And I think like the little subtlety of that foreshadowing that pays off in the end, I think it was nice. This whole exchange, like with him appearing from the shadows in her room and them having like this back and forth, it's like reluctant allies to lovers type banter. So it's really, really nice. Something that I forgot to mention is Victor told Santagel that if he gets Luzia chosen by the king, that he'll finally let Santagel free and Santagel will no longer have to serve his bloodline. So Santagel is kind of training Louisa to trap her into the fate that he's been trapped into. So this whole time he's like, I am betraying her. And so he's really trying not to like her. But the whole time they're like quipping, getting the vibes on, right? I think that the romance in this is also very well written because there's a lot of show not tell, and you can see the way that the characters' behavior and their thoughts conflict with each other because of the way that Leigh Bardugo will like describe how he sees her, you know, with such detail where it's like, homie, you do not feel the way that you think you feel, right? So this progresses into a next chapter where it's like an image of Santagel as the darker side that he is known for. He's actually known in the streets as El Alacran, the Scorpion, because he's like this like assassin, magical, scary boogeyman type figure that is known to be the right hand of Victor. But this small chapter is really to show like the savagery that Santagel can be capable of, because he goes to this dude named Gravito. I don't exactly remember why, but Victor had hired Gravito to do some shitty things. Gravito is a piece of shit. Gravito's son answers the door for Santagel, and Gravito's son's like half of his face is beat the fuck up because as a kid, when he was like 8, he accidentally let a fox out of their kennel, and Gravito used a hammer and beat in half of his face because of that. And so when Gravito's son sees Santagel at the door, he's like, are you here to kill my dad? And Santagel's just like, don't worry about it, homie, just get on out of here. And he goes in and he kills Gravito, but the way he does it is he allows Gravito to stab him a couple times and watch his blows do nothing, just because he wants to watch the terror in Gravito's eyes before he turns around and murders him back. And the whole time Gravito's son is actually watching in the corner, and he's like, hey, thanks homie, some sick shit. Next chapter, we are back with Louisa, and she has a dream, and in her dream she has like this little melody come to her. If I haven't made it clear, like the little spells that she says, she's singing a lot of this. It's a lot of hums. Even what she's saying is very poetic sounding. I talk more about that in the book report, but yeah, so this melody comes to her, and when she wakes up, she's just filled with all this bursting life, and she feels so in control and full of magic. And she has a conversation with Aguida, the cook from the beginning, and the cook starts talking shit about Santagel, and Louisa straight up threatens her, and she's like, you better watch your mouth, stop talking about devil worshiping and stuff, or else you might get indicted, you know? Like, after that, Jualit comes over and she tells Louisa that they're gonna go get her some clothing for the competition. They're like, we need to get you looking right. So they go to this tailor named Perucho, right? While they're at the tailor's, they hear word of this this magical girl child that can see glimpses of the future, and her name is Teoda Halcon, and she's going to be one of the competitors. That'll be important later. We get back to the house, and this whole time since the sponsorship has started, Louisa has been practicing her magic with Santagel. And so they're practicing their magic, and then Victor comes in and he's turned and he's like, yo, I need to see some real powerful magic right now, Louisa. And Louisa's like, well, I don't know if I'm ready. I don't know. And so Victor is like, you gonna be ready. And he grabs Santagel's fingers and he starts breaking them one by one while he demands that Louisa, he's like, hey, I'm gonna break him bone by bone until you do something magical for me. Something real magical. And Louisa is just consumed with all this like feeling, and it all explodes out of her. And by the way, Victor isn't breaking these fingers himself. He has a buff bodyguard named El Pachuco, I think his name is, doing all this. So and Santagel is not resisting because he is the pet of, what do you call it, of Victor. So while this is happening, Louisa is getting rightfully just like, oh my god, what the fuck? And all she thinks, she's like, I'm getting filled up with this magic. I just want for this dude hurting Santagel to not be here. And that's where the chapter ends. And then in the next chapter, we find out how the bodyguard that was breaking Santagel's fingers got teleported into the floor. So half of his body got put into the study on the lower floor, and half of his body was just spread across her floor, and homie is dead. In the process of this, Louisa had bitten her tongue in half, and so she almost killed herself because she has the power to heal herself with her song, but she had bitten her tongue in half. So Victor is like in front of her. He's like, Coach Junior's like, yo, sing it, heal yourself, hurry. And he's able to save her. The bodyguard is beyond grits. After this, she is just passed out, she being Louisa. And Santagel takes her to Valentina's room, actually. And because like there's dead body in Louisa's room, or it was, while she's passed out, they clean it, whatever. And so next chapter, Louisa wakes up and she's trying to put everything together in her head, and she sneaks back into the room where it happened, but she goes back to her linen closet where homie El Pachuco, the bodyguard, got murdered. She murdered. And she sees Santagel had discarded his satchel and had left it in the mad scramble to help her. And she opens it and she starts reading through his letters, which she's a maid, so she's not supposed to be able to read, even though she can read a couple different languages and knows, bits and pieces of other languages here and there, but she's not supposed to be able to read. But she actually finds a letter detailing how Antonio Perez had a medium divine his face in the stars and whatever, and do his birth chart, and how much faith he put into his birth chart is what is the information in this letter. That'll be important later. After she is sneaking this information, her aunt Hualit actually comes in the room. Louisa is talking to Hualit and she's like, yo, Victor is a fucking monster. Like, he was doing this to Santagel. Like, all he cares about is greed and money. I don't know how you can be around him. That dude is the worst. And Hualit is like, you don't understand what I've gone through to get to this point. And she kind of talks about her life as a sex worker and how she has worked hard to get from where she was to who she is now. Very, very heavy stuff. But ultimately, she's telling Louisa, like, at this point, like, we're committing. And once you reach that place, I'm working on connecting with this rabbi in this other city, and once we're done here, we're going to use all the money that we get from this, and we'll sneak away, and no one will ever find us again. And so now Louisa has kind of like this little end game kind of dream, because this whole time she was kind of just chasing the high of not being poor and completely powerless. And now she's like, okay, I can finally maybe see a way out of this that doesn't end in me just eventually getting executed, once they get tired of me performing my tricks for them. After her talk with Hualit, Louisa has a talk with Santagel about whether she still wants to pursue this tournament and everything, and it's a layered conversation about desire and sin and ambition, and it's tied to illusions of the apple, Adam and Eve, and kind of Persephone too, because it's a pomegranate, and it kind of communicates this idea of committing yourself to this other side forever. But again, you can read the book for the actual layers of literature, but it's lovely. From there, we actually head into the part where they're getting ready to head out to the tournament. And so Valentina and Juanit come and visit Louisa, and they're helping her get dressed and ready. And they start talking about her curly Jewish hair, and they're shitting on it, and she gets really pissed. But before she says anything, Santagel pops out of the shadows, and he's like, "Shut up. That hair is lovely, and you ain't gonna touch it." And he actually like threatens them, which is like a big moment, because there is like a lot of these characters have a point of connection and then a point of disconnection, where it's like part of their identity connects them to each other and makes them allies at instances, and other parts of their identities makes them enemies at certain instances. And this is one of the moments where Santagel and Louisa are truly like paired against the others, and it was nice. The Victor de Paradis household and the Don Marius household, they all head to the location of the Turnio. I don't remember the name of it, but it's like this very grand castle type place. And so they get there. We find out that there are going to be 3 tests. The tests are demonstration of proof, proof of purity, and the purity of power. And so the 3 different tests that all of these 4 contestants do are supposed to exhibit excellence in these 3 areas. As they walk into the place, they see this red-headed beauty, and her name is Gracia de Valera, and she's known as like the beauty, and so she's very much like the image of what you would want a saintess to be. And so she walks in here stealing the air out of the room, but Santagel is just staring at Louisa. He's like, "You got it." Gracia actually has a very sneaky plan. She chooses to go first, and when she does, she actually does a way more extravagant version of Louisa's classic breaking the glass and remending it trick. And she uses a lot of smoke and mirrors. She has a lot of production behind it. This chapter is told through Santagel's eyes, so he can tell that there's no real magic going on, and he's like, "This is trash." But at the same time, he's like, it's such a spectacle, and it's because Louisa is going to be following it up, everyone's going to be like, "Oh, like that's not impressive at all." So he's super nervous as Louisa goes up, but Louisa is intelligent, and on the fly she comes up with what she's going to do, and she starts singing, and she floats all the broken glass over the crowd, and she organizes it into the star that was on Antonio Perez's star chart, his birth chart that she read in Santagel's letters. This moment also reveals to Santagel that she can actually read, and he's like, "Yo, this girl continues to surprise me." But she floats it out and does the constellation of the star that Antonio Perez was born under. And so Antonio Perez is like, "Oh shit, not only did she do this magic and does it look incredible because all the glass is flickering like light, like stars in the sky, but she also somehow evoked my star chart, something that she never should have known." And so he is like, "Yo, she might be the real deal Holyfield." After this, the two last contestants go. Teoda Halcon, the girl child that I told you about that can like see visions and stuff, she goes and tells Antonio Perez a deathbed secret that his father told him, and then she protects a storm that was on the way. Everyone's like, "Whoa!" And then the last dude, his name is Fortune Donade, and he sings a song and he plays on his lute or guitar or something, and it's like super emotional, and he calls like a flock of birds in, and that's basically it. After all of the performances are done, then everyone's rushed to this banquet, and Louisa just eats there until she gets tired, and then she returns to her quarters with the people that came. A maid came named Concha, and so Concha is helping her get ready for bed at night, and so is Hualit is also there. But then Santiago comes and shoos them both away. Well, Hualit leaves, and then Santiago shows up, and he's like, Concha, get out of here. And then the two of them have like this really romantic, sizzling conversation back and forth. And while they're talking, Louisa suddenly slams her hairbrush down, and a scorpion comes out of it. And Santiago starts reaching for her, and she's like, holy shit, did he do this? But ultimately, he just grabs the scorpion, carefully takes it out. But then they're like, someone planted the scorpion. Someone is trying to kill you like they killed the dude that was in your place initially. But this moment of danger is also a moment that kind of brings the two of them together, because they realize that they're truly on each other's side. The next morning after this assassination attempt, Concha the maid wakes Louisa up, and she's like, Santiago wants to meet you. So she gets her dressed and she sends her out. But while Louisa is on her way, Hualit intercepts her, and she's like, do not trust Santiago. But while she's telling Louisa this, Santiago walks up, and he's like, get the fuck out of here. Stop whispering in her ear. Hualit walks off, and Louisa straight up asks Santiago, she's like, did you... Oh, that's the thing I forgot to mention. When Concha wakes her up, she tells Louisa that last night a guard had choked on a scorpion. A scorpion was shoved in his mouth, and it stung his tongue, and he choked and died. And so Louisa asks Santiago, she's like, was that you? And he admits it, basically. He was like, homie should not have been messing with you. And she's like, shit, I'm not that mad at it. And then he just tells her to go, and he's like, just go be a good contestant, go talk to the other contestants, try to figure out what you can so you can win this. Let me focus on murdering the people that are trying to murder you, you know? So she goes, and when she meets the other contestants, she meets them in like this little garden area, and there's this dude that is doing portraits of all of them, because they're like these supposed to be like these historic contestants. So they're all getting portraits done, and when she walks up, Gracia is getting her portrait done, and so Luzia, oh my god, I don't know why I can't see these names. Luzia sees Theodore Halcon, the girl child, and she's like, let me go talk to her. And the two of them start talking, and they really hit it off. They talk about how Gracia is a fraud and a phony, and they talk about their relationship to this competition where they're working to become puppets of the same empire that has destroyed their histories and their heritage and is seeking to only use them, but at the same time it's their only way out. And so they really connect in this moment. And then Donna Day walks up, and he starts talking to Louisa, and he's like, listen, don't trust Santiago. You know, and he talks about how his sponsor is this mistress, and he like basically she's this rich lady that he seduced, and he's her boy toy, and she's sponsoring him in. And he talks about how much he hates her, but how much he loves the soft life so much that he's like, I can't give it up. Next chapter follows Santiago as he goes on this great hunt with like all the important people, so Victor de Paradis and Don Marius and all that. Don Marius, they're doing like hunts and shit while the contestants are contending. So he goes on one of these hunts with them, and while the whole time he's thinking about why he's so deeply connected to Louisa, and when he gets back, she tells him about Donna Day warning him how she shouldn't trust him, and they have like a really layered, steamy conversation about whether he is a mon or not. Santiago is just like, damn, I'm really bothered by how close they're trying to get. And so this is all what then leads into the second tournament trial. And the second trial is the test of purity. And so Louisa is super nervous and she's just like, all right, let's see what happens. Turns out that the second trial is like this puppet show that they do. And then as they enact this story, they'll come to a juncture where there is a puppet that represents the contestants. And they'll be like, now that we've come to this juncture of the story, what will you do in this story? And that tells us like your mindset when using your powers either for the crown or for evil, right? So eventually then it comes to Louisa's turn, and there's like a bunch of like evil puppets facing the crown, and they ask her, how will you like protect the crown? And then she sings and summons this wall of like flowers to protect in this play. But then the puppets start to like act out very rude and disgusting gestures and stuff, and their shadows start to grow, and then suddenly they're like these shadow monsters that start attacking everyone. And Louisa saves the day because she uses one of her spells to wink out all the candles, getting rid of all the shadows, all the light creating the shadows, and so everything is saved, right? After she saves everyone, Santangel takes her back to her room, and for some reason the maid Concha is missing. And when Santangel goes to leave, Louisa's like, no, help me get ready for bed, help me get undressed. All this stuff leads to the steamiest, best, like fuzziest chapter of the book. I won't reveal which chapter that is, but it's really a vibe. And Santangel also tells this story that is revealing how he came to be in his position. Essentially, he is a magical creature that made a bargain, and now all of his luck is being siphoned off, so he gets to live forever, but he only gets to live in service and connection to the Paradis bloodline. And they could always free him, but none of the generations do, because they all value him way more as a tool than they do as a being or a friend. Because the very first, the Paradis that first chained Santangel to this fate, he was actually best friends with that ancestor. So it's like a really fucked up tale. But we learn all of this like right alongside what I would argue the most romantic chapter, and I love the way that Leigh Bardugo is able to balance those two vibes perfectly. And the reason why Santangel can never leave Victor is because if he leaves too far from Victor, he starts to decompose, and so like his life essence is bound to Victor in a way that he'll die if he's not next to Victor. So that's like their whole relationship and why he's bound to him and can't escape. The next morning after this super romantic night, they also do it. But after this, they wake up to screaming the next morning. And so they both hop up. Santangel is trying to like peace out and pretend like, yo, like, because you know they're not supposed to be. First of all, Louisa's gimmick is that she's a nun, so she's not supposed to be having sex at all. But these two servants aren't supposed to be relating like that. Valentina comes busting open the door. Santangel was like, I heard the commotion and I came here first. But luckily people are too busy figuring out other stuff to truly look at things, but they're still disheveled and stuff. So Valentina knows what's up. But they look down the hallway, and apparently Teodo Halcon and her father, who was like the person that came on this trip with her, and her maid are all getting taken away by the Inquisition for the puppet attack that happened the night prior, because they were digging into everyone, and apparently they come after Teodo because they realize that she has ties to, I think, like some Lutheran Christians or something. It's a religious dispute, but basically they're like, your magic is corrupted and we found this out and now you're going to be put to death. And Toyota is like, fuck y'all. Like, I was hiding it before, but if you go challenge me with it, I fully admit to what I was doing, and you can take me. I go with peace to my God. And so they haul all of them out of there, and Louisa is heartbroken because she really liked Toyota. And then there's like a little scene where Valentina makes like eye contact with Louisa after all this commotion, and she's like, "Are you the one that saved us?" And Louisa's just like, "Yeah." Or I mean, I don't know if she remember if she admits it or not, but we know. And so then Valentina like offers to help her get ready, and it shows that like they're starting to bond a little on a more human level, and Valentina is finally looking past the social barrier that kept that distance between them, and now they're relating way more as women and people, you know, taking care of each other. In the late afternoon, Antonio Perez comes to visit Luzia and lets her know that her and Donade are now the only two contestants, because Gracia last night actually got attacked by one of the shadow demons, and Luzia used her powers to save her. And after that, Gracia was like, fuck this, like, I have no powers, this is actually kind of serious. She was like, I'm out of here. And Toyota got locked up, so now it's just Donade and Luzia. And so Antonio is like, we're moving on to the third trial. It's going to be occurring at this palace named El Escorial, and it's just you two. Make me proud, make this happen, because my reputation with the king depends on you doing well. After that, there's a short Santangel and Victor chapter. Ever since all this devil shit happened from the second trial, Victor and Aunt Juanit have been off the grid. No one has been able to find them at all. The main reason why they've been off the grid is because they don't want to be blamed for nothing, and so they're distancing themselves from Luzia in case she also gets caught up in this big Inquisition push. And he comes back, and Victor comes back and he summons Santangel, and he tells Santangel, like, what do you think happened? And Santangel is like, I'm pretty sure that what occurred was Donade's fault, and because that was super unnatural. And they're like, okay, we'll keep our eye out. Luzia, meanwhile, is in her room, and she's bored. And so she heads out to the garden, and she gets intercepted by her Aunt Juanit's maid, and her Aunt Juanit's maid ferries her off to this little cut where Aunt Juanit is waiting, and they have this discussion, and her aunt is like, listen, I'm about to make that move to run to the rabbi I have in that other city. I'm leaving in one day. If you want to come, meet me at midnight. Otherwise, I'm out of here. Like, I can't wait for you. I'm out of here. Luzia actually tells her aunt in response, she's like, I'm not going with you. I'm following this through, because she doesn't trust her aunt to take care of her, which she shouldn't, honestly, because her aunt has had that ability her whole life. And she actually has this really touching moment where she asks her aunt, she's like, all these years, why wouldn't you take me in? And her aunt was like, honestly, I was looking out for me. And it's just such a moment where it's just like, damn, yo, like, damn. Luzia comes back from the super emotional conversation, and when she's in her room, she finds that Santangel is there, and they have more romance, and they do it again. So then the next morning, they wake up, and they have like the relationship we see of future talks together. Luzia is like, I foresee the day that you don't have to leave at dawn from me. Homie's talking about, I want to wake up every day to you. Like, they're having those type of conversations where they're actually seeing, like, no longer are we denying this shit. Let's see how we can make it through this together, right? After this, Luzia leaves her room, and Valentina interrupts her and pulls her off to the side. And while they're talking, magically Donade is there, and the Valentina's like, oh, I'll let you guys talk. And so Luzia is like, I know you did it on purpose. And Donade apparently is trying to talk to Louisa because he's telling her like you shouldn't trust Santingel because Santingel has been close to a lot of the previous contestants that were in here that got, and so Louisa like caught up in this love but also not really being able to trust anyone, even down to her aunt. And even this dude being such a shady character, El Alacran, she's like very conflicted because she's like, is he truly like, do we love each other the way I think we do? While Louisa is agonizing over whether she can trust Santingel, Valentina comes back and she talks about how Louisa shouldn't trust Santingel once again, and Louisa gets defensive and she's like, bitch, you can't have children. I know, super cutthroat. And they like, things get ugly for a moment and then they start to bond now that they've kind of said the ugly things that they never kind of addressed about each other, and they kind of get really close in this moment. It's a nice scene. Later that night, Louisa is staying up trying to see if Santingel will visit her, you know, for some sultry times, but instead it's Victor, and he presses her and he's like, I know that your aunt was Jewish, and I know that she's your aunt, and I know that you're Jewish, so you better win this tournament or else your ass is grass. And Louisa bucks up again because, you know, by this time you should know she ain't taking nobody's shit. She's like, because you've used the magical luck of Santingel to get everything you have in your life, what a torture it must be in your brain to not know whether you're the man you think you are, because you've never had to prove it to yourself. And he slaps her across her face enough for her to bleed, but she just smiles at him with blood in her mouth. I'm like, yes! Oh my god, bro. Some of the scenes of this book are just peak, you know? So the next day is tournament day. And so they all head to this like big place that's in this woods. They go through these woods. And then it's this platform, this pier on this huge lake. And there are all these chairs out. And they're supposed to be performing the third trial in front of the king, since he's going to be choosing them. But instead, it is because Antonio Perez, like I said, he's the old secretary to the king. He was displaced by this other dude, Mateo Vasquez de Leca, I think. And this dude is the new secretary of the king. And so he's basically Antonio's op. And so Antonio is like, yo, why is he judging this? Where's the king? I'm going to just pull back the curtain. The king was not looking for a champion. This was all orchestrated by Antonio because he was trying to force his way back into the king's good graces. And basically Mateo came to make sure that shit ain't happening. So they pull up, but we don't know this yet. So they pull up to this pier. And when they arrive, Santingel pulls up on a black horse out of the woods to talk to Lucia, and he's like, basically, Victor's been keeping me away from you, but don't worry, like, I'm here. He admits to her that he had been working to get her trapped under Victor's servitude and put in his position, but he was like, listen, I'm not on that no more. He tells Lucia that she should fail. And it's an interesting moment because, one, she doesn't know if failing means they kill her anyway. But he's telling her that if she fails, she won't get into that position of being the next champion, aka being the next servant. And so, one, her pride is a little too big for that. But she's also like, I don't know what will happen. So her and Donade walk up to this pier, and she's just super nervous, and she does not know what she's about to do. Lucia makes this plan for her miracle to make a huge cross out of the planks and boards that are in the pier. So she starts singing and she makes this huge cross above the lake. Both her and Donade took this long pier to the middle of the lake. So she takes all the boards and she makes this huge cross, and Donade hijacks her spell in order to then turn all of the boards that she had turned into this cross into a massive ship as a way to like signal to the secretary, like, I'm giving you ships in order to win wars and bring more glory. And the thing that's giving Donade all this power to make such a grand illusion, he has like an amulet that amplifies his power. And Luzia, realizing that he was betraying her in this moment, hijacking her moment in order to win the tournament, she uses one of her spells, one of the chaotic ones that you aren't supposed to use in certain ways, and she uses it on his amulet that's made of jewels and stuff, and the amulet just starts turning into spiders and shit, and it freaks him out, and he loses control of the illusion, like making the cross break apart and shit, and it looks horrible. And so everyone is clear, like, this dude lost. In seeing that he is losing, Donade tries to attack Luzia, but his power is more illusion, not really true like physical magic. So she just starts building the pier back to shore and removing the boards behind her and leaving him stranded in the lake. But as she gets closer to the shore, she sees that shit ain't sweet and nobody's even paying attention anymore, because Antonio Perez had made a mad dash while the third trial was going on, because he saw that his old op was there. He was like, the king don't give two shits. He is literally like, this is going to be my last moment. So while they were performing the third trial, he made a run for it. And so everyone on the shore no longer cares about the tournament. They're all searching for this dude in the shadows. Luzia shows up and Santiago pulls up on his horse and he's like, listen, get on the back. We got to get the fuck out of here. And he's trying to get through the woods and get her to her Aunt Juanit in order for her to meet with her and head to that city out of town and meet that rabbi in a different city. And he's like, I'm getting you out of here. But in that pursuit, they shoot him down with an arrow and he falls off his horse, and Luzia is forced to leave him behind and run. And before she runs, though, Valentina and Don Marius find another horse and they're running through the woods, and they come across the soldiers chasing and shooting at Luzia and Santigel. And Valentina has this moment where she's like, Don Marius, like, husband, give them the horse, and like, they deserve it, they've given us everything, like, just let them be free. And he's like, fuck that, like, they can suffer. And this is the moment Valentina's like, I'm leaving you. Like, I don't care. I'm leaving your ass. You are a piece of shit. This next chapter, we follow along with Aunt Juanit on her escape plan that Luzia didn't get to join because she and Santigel got attacked and captured. Santigel got captured. Luzia left him behind and ran. And so we're looking at Juanit, and she and her maid have these two escorts that Victor paid for, and they stop by this bridge, and Juanit is like, oh, they came out here to kill me. And so in a last-ditch effort, she grabs one of them and takes them over the bridge with her, and the two of them hit the water and die. It's a much more satisfying ending than it sounds, because it kind of wraps up her journey and what a lot of her decisions ultimately meant for her. But it's also like, good thing that Luzia didn't attach her fate to her aunt, because she knew that she had to carve one for herself. We then look at Luzia, and she actually was also captured. The last we see, she runs away, abandoning Santigel, but she got captured, and now she is awaiting execution with Teoda Halcon. Valentina is now disgusted with Marius, and so she chooses to run away from him, and she goes to this lady playwright. The lady playwright is kind of like threaded throughout the whole story, but she's not big enough a character for me to talk about her. But this is where her role in the book really comes into fruition, because she becomes this sponsor for Valentina to send basically commissary and also support to Luzia while she is awaiting execution. Valentina actually becomes like her sponsor via this playwright named Querita. Luzia is in the process of her being in prison. She is stripped naked and waterboarded and tortured, and they get her to admit to all types of shit that she you know, about her being a sinner and all this and that. It's, you know, it's a horrible scene. But then after they have this extraction, they're like, we have set a date for your execution. During this time, Toyota and Luzia, they start to plan an escape plan, and they almost get away with it with the help of Toyota's brother, the person that we thought was her father, but he's actually her brother. And they get found out, and her brother gets executed, and then they're still on trial. And I think it actually moves their trial date up a bit. From here, we switch back to Santangel and learn that after he was captured, Victor put him in this place that they call like the Scorpion's Den, which is like this little hole, and they lock him to just be emaciated and slowly wither because he can't die. So they just lock him in this hole for a couple weeks while all this stuff is happening, and the escape attempt happens. And then Victor pulls him out, and he's like, listen, we are going to go and talk to the tribunal and get them to let Louisa go so we can still use her power, right? Because Victor is just, he wants it all, and he's never had to be denied because he's always had this magical luck. So he thinks he can get anything off. We also learned that in the course of all this, Victor had played political games, that he was now a duke. So he had already raised the station. He's like, I can get more. And we also learned that Toyota escaped during that. So her brother died, but Toyota escaped, and Louisia was recaptured. So they go and they get the tribunal to summon Louisia, and Louisia gets there, and she's surprised to see Victor in Santangel. And Santangel like does some like message to let her know like, you can put the blame on me. You can put the blame on me. And so she's like, bet. And so she's like, that's my corruptor. And, you know, this is a tricky moment for Victor because Santangel is connected to Victor. Victor attempts to, like, put himself on the chopping block a bit just so they don't execute Luzia, because he still wants to use her power and he still feels very invincible. But then they bring out Donaday and his mistress as testifiers against Luzia, and she's like, Donaday, you bitch, man, like you really went the full 9 yards to just try and fuck with me to the very end. Like, what a piece of shit. This is the nail in the coffin, and Luzia is still set to get executed. In the coming days, she has like a little moment with Santangel because she bribes a guard in order to get them to steal a few moments together. But then the morning of the execution day comes. The final 2 chapters is the scene of Louisia's execution. And they lead her and a Flemish pirate and her and a Flemish pirate and a couple other sinners that they found for this big execution day. It's like a whole feast day it's called like Feast of the Saints. It's a whole celebration day. And at the end of it, they tie them all to pyres and they spark them up. And as Louisia is burning, she stares out at the crowd and sees Donaday wearing his talisman again. She's able to channel her power through the talisman and cast a much more powerful spell. A spell that teleports her, I believe, out from her being executed far away. And then the book kind of ends with her and Santangel running for the rest of their lives, because Santangel is still under his curse. And so when they run away together, the world thinking she's dead and Santangel just being gone, he disintegrates every night like he used to, but now she just uses her magic to reconstitute him. So he dies every night and she resurrects him every night. And honestly, the ending to the book came a little too quickly for me. I don't disagree with the way that it ended, but I think that the way that it was written just happened a little too quick. Some of the side stories just didn't mesh perfectly the way that I feel like it could have, but still, this was a really, really good book. Like, there is a lot of talk about desire and the ability to claim that for oneself. And I think that it was done in a very entertaining and enjoyable way that really kept me reading and super engaged for the whole time. So really, really happy with this book. And yeah, this is going to be a long video to edit, but I think we've already realized that that's the only type of videos I do. So thank you for listening, and I'll see you next time.